What's going on? It's Jack and JD. And look, that was a depressing loss. There was a lot of positives. We'll get to them, but the Blue Devils were up 46-37 at the half. They had chances. They even had chances at the end of the game after losing the lead. With 2 minutes to go, they took like a 1 point lead. It was a tie game. They had a chance to win it. And unfortunately, Cooper Flagg turns it over 2 times at the end of the game. And I feel really bad for Cooper Flagg, who was by far the best player on the court tonight, certainly the best Blue Devil. And he had an outstanding game, and I just feel bad for him in the sense that all that's going to be talked about is the 2 turnovers now at the end of the game, not how well he played throughout the game. But JD, go ahead as I kind of round up some loose ends here.
All right. Make certain you have the data points when I'm done here. So let me start by saying hats off to Kentucky. During the our preview of this game, I said I wasn't certain that Mark Pope was ready for the moment. He absolutely was. He made an amazing adjustment on defense because Duke had that 9 point lead at halftime, and then they got Duke got outscored 40-26 in the second half. Um, so from 46 points in the first half to only producing 26 points in the second half, he did an outstanding job of getting the Kentucky players ready for the second half, and they played incredibly well. So, as much as I am a Duke fan, the best thing to do after a game like this is to tip my hat. There I go, tipping my hat to Kentucky and the Kentucky Nation and all the folks that had comments for us. Some of them positive, some of them were, a little more harsh. Well deserved, well deserved. No hard feelings about any of it. But my hat goes off for how Kentucky comported themselves and closed the game.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, as Jay Billis said, in their starting lineup, the youngest player for Kentucky was older than the oldest player for Duke, and that showed down the stretch. The experience for Kentucky, they played really well. As you said, they made a good defensive adjustment, although I think it's a little bit of both. I think, right, they certainly made an adjustment, and at the same time, I felt like Duke missed a lot of open shots, which I think
Oh,
that's just
okay.
part of basketball.
Look,
Go ahead.
there's no question that Cooper Flagg, right up until the end, with those 2 turnovers, and yes, he's 17 years old, and we're gonna have to cut him a little bit of slack. He's not gonna be perfect every second of the game, but um, there are two very important moments in this game that I think, as Duke fans, we should point out early on. The first time in the first half when uh, Kentucky managed to start to build the lead, they went to that core three that we were talking about with Sion James and
Before you get there, JD, I think this would be a great game to kind of break down from the beginning, because you're
okay,
yeah, I
go
get
ahead.
where I know where you're going, but I think let's start at the beginning. So this game starts out, Kentucky wins the tip, and Duke's defensive intensity from their starting five was awesome. The first play, I want to be very clear. The first play, they get a couple buckets. Kentucky gets the ball. It's like 4-1 early, and then I think it's Andrew Carr hits the first three for Kentucky, and they hit a couple of threes, but Proctor and Foster got off to great starts for Duke. Specifically, Proctor scoring wise, he had some early buckets, And Foster had some nice assists. He had a couple of steals. In particular, he dove and got a steal in Kentucky side of the court. And it's 11-9 Duke early on with 7 points early from Tyrese Proctor.
At the
Then,
end of the first segment.
first segment, exactly. Thank you.
So let's explain, because Jack, for those folks that we talked, about the game, we dissect the game very differently than they do on television. It's really about 2 20-minute halves and timeouts that are called. But because of television timeouts, each half is really broken into 5 4-minute segments where the coaches know that no matter what, as soon as they get as close to 16, 12, 8, 4, there is going to be a timeout anyway. So you're referring to the first segment. So take it from there.
Yeah, so the first segment, 16 minutes roughly left in the first half. It's 11-9 Duke. At this point, Kentucky had hit 2 threes. Second segment starts. Kentucky hits a couple more threes. So the first 2 threes were from Owe and Carr. Carr gets another one. Then it's Almanor gets one and Krisa gets one. And Kentucky had started to build a lead. I believe you had this marked down. It was 19-13. And then I'll let you go because I know this is what the point that you were looking to get to here.
Well, right, because I think what we felt was one of the keys to having Duke, if they go down early like we're used to the last couple of years, that the combination of Zion James, Malik Brown, and Gillis came in together and just stopped Kentucky flat, and that they shrank that 6-point lead to 19-19, and we finish the second segment with 12 minutes to go. It was 21-19 Kentucky.
21-19, exactly. And at this point, Cooper Flagg kind of kept Duke in the game in this segment where they're kind of struggling for offense, I would say. And Flagg was kind of able to keep them, I would say, afloat. And it's 21-19 Kentucky, but as a Duke fan, you're feeling pretty good about where things are. And then you get to a point where you get to the under 8-minute mark. It's 28-24 Duke, and they're starting to build some momentum. And let's see. The three-pointers, Kentucky was 5 for their first 5. I think they went like 1 for their next 7. So they slowed down. And actually, Duke made
even more than that, Jack. They went 2 for 11.
2 for 11. Duke made some adjustments into how they were guarding the three-pointer. They started pressing out.
Up. Yep.
They started pressing out more. And also they were, and this continued in the second half, they were doing a good job of, outside of Kirk Krisa, who got a couple of threes, really limiting Kobe Brea and especially Jackson Robinson, the 3 most potent three-point shooters, I would say, on Kentucky's roster. And so 28-24, 7:24 to go. And then you get to a moment, this was, I thought, could have been a key moment in this game. 30-24 Duke, and that's the second foul on Cooper Flagg. And instead, they end up stretching the lead. It's 36-29 Duke with about 4 minutes to go. And Proctor hits a big 3, and you're thinking as a Duke fan, this is, certainly not anywhere close to over, but you're thinking this is flowing in the right direction. And
especially let's throw in those 2 lefty layups by K2.
Thank you.
They were phenomenal.
Yes.
They were phenomenal there. And so that was part of the momentum that you thought we were cooking with both of our, wings there, K2 and Flagg, and that Flagg was coming alive as opposed to where we'll wind up with his stats at the end of the game.
Yeah. And exactly. Thank you for bringing that up. That was very important because Khan, after looking a little bit nervous, maybe not ready for the moment, he seemed to start to settle in towards the back half of the first half, especially when Cooper went out of the game. As you said, got a couple of nice lefty layups seemed to find a flow. And Duke, thanks to Proctor and K2, goes into the half up 46-37. And as a Duke fan, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, I know Kentucky is probably going to get going from three. They'll probably hit a few more. But I felt like Duke, we were 3 of 12 at the half from three. I thought that we could get some shots because I felt K2, even Foster, we had missed some open threes. I felt like, they could fall in the second half. And the second half starts, and Kentucky, they hit first, kind of like they did in the middle of the second half. They got off to a good start, and it goes quickly.
9-point lead. Yeah. 9-point lead goes right to 4 points.
Yes, and by the time you get to the under 16-minute mark, it's 50-45 Duke. But the momentum clearly on the side of Kentucky. And look, I think also in that segment, or just after that segment, Malawak.
Segment, yep.
Malawak's injury starts to flare up. They're saying it was cramps. At first he goes down. Carr kind of rolls over his leg, right? His like knee and ankle kind of gets rolled over. Then it's cramps.
Not a dirty play.
No. It just happened. And then from that point on, he's like in and out of the game. He's in the game for a couple minutes. He's out of the game for 5-6 minutes. And I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say Duke wins this game if Malawak is in, like playing a normal amount of minutes. But I do think that had a factor in terms of the momentum, because he was a major deterrent around the rim, but also offensively, he was an outlet for Duke to get alley-oops, or if they were stopped around the rim, it was an easy dump-off pass, and they didn't have that with Malik Brown in the game. And so you get to the under 12-minute mark, and it's 56-52 Duke, but it kind of felt like they're just holding on to the game because offensively, Kentucky made some good adjustments on defense. They even, at some point a little bit later, mixed in a little zone, and Duke Go ahead.
I got to back you up a little bit. Before you get to the segment is the second injury, which was the killer, which was when Sion James goes down.
Sion. Just trying to help us out here,
Excuse me, you're going to correct how I talk. I'm from Queens. I mean, we talk very differently. So you have Mal's injury, you have Sion's injury, and it is. I'm going to talk about it because it happened, but I am not going to talk about it for the reason that we lost. Because as we get to the end of the game, there was an opportunity, several opportunities for either team to win. It was just unfortunate because clearly Duke had that rotation. And that rotation was the starting five and then the three of them. And all of a sudden, two of the pieces are in trouble because we play 8 and they play 10.
Sort of. They had played 10 previously, but I think one of their 10 guys, Colin Chandler, he only played 2 minutes. So they really played 9. He got 2 minutes in the first half. I thought that could be an adjustment from Coach Pope, who certainly had a good game. And as you said, this game, I mean, I guess to skip ahead a little bit, you get to the under, let's see, with 8 minutes, 29 seconds to go, 61-57 Duke. And so at this point, again, the entire second half, it kind of felt like Duke was just trying to hold on. And Kentucky was playing much better. They had just a much better flow. They just seemed to be in a better space, whereas Duke, especially in the second half, was heavily reliant on Cooper Flagg to create something. And there was a lot of standing around and Cooper kind of dribbling at the top of the key and trying to create a shot from either the mid-range or get to the basket. And they just didn't have a great offensive flow. But I think let's get to the final 4 minutes and kind of just dissect it. So I'll just set – go ahead. Go ahead.
Hold on. One more thing that you want to add, because I think, when we spoke at halftime, we were very pleased. I was pleasantly surprised. You were very pleased by the guard play from Duke, that they actually had a very good first half with Proctor 10, and with a nice set of a good stat line coming from
Foster.
But I got them both. You didn't have to. I was there. But in the second half, Proctor, Foster, not major contributions. It was almost like, wait, Flagg, you're our star. You take us. And Knippel's line is actually...
I was going to get to this at the end of the game. I was going to get to it after the game when we do the review.
You can do it when you want to, but,
I wanted to go...
Hey, half the fun is being able to jump in there. Go ahead. Tell them about the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, I wanted to go through the timeline of the game. Then you want to go through the box score. Dude, that's the point of the end of the game, So, listen, okay? We here we are. So let's set the table. 67-66 Duke after major shout out to Andrew Carr, who had key bucket after key bucket for Kentucky, several and ones. And listen, he gets the and one with about a little less than 4 minutes to go. It's 67-66 Duke, but he's got the free throw after the break, and he hits it. I feel like he converted on all of his and ones, which is a really big...
Had it at 67-64, and Carr had a drive to the basket and one, which tied it at 67-67.
That's what I just said, but it's okay. You
said 67-66 3 times.
Yeah. Yes, because he goes at the... You're not listening. At the break, it's 67-66. They call, because it's a foul, it's under 4 minutes. You go TV timeout. He comes back. Then he hits the free throw, 67-67. All right, okay. Let's move on. Okay. So now we're on the same page, I hope. So
it's interesting.
Yes, exactly. And at this point, it actually... I don't know if you remember this, but it's 67-67, just so we're good here. And Jackson Robinson gets a wide open corner three due to a miscommunication by Duke and misses it. And I thought that was definitely going in because he hadn't gotten a good look pretty much all game. And that was an awesome opportunity for him. Kentucky does end up getting the lead, 69-67. 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go.
Let me interject. In between that, after he missed the three, K2 had a chance to take us to a lead and turn the ball over. Okay.
Good. I didn't have that. I'm glad you interjected. So 2:30 to go, 69-67 Kentucky. And Cooper Flagg gets an and one. I didn't write down the time here. I apologize. But it's 69-69. He gets it over Brea. He shoots that kind of mid-range shot. And he goes to the line and converts. So
Duke's
2 minutes. Duke's up one, 70-69. They've got a chance to win this game after it kind of felt like, I wouldn't say inevitable, but it certainly was like, okay, Kentucky's going to, at some point, they're going to take it. Yes.
Just slipping away.
And immediately, speaking of Andrew Carr, shout out to Andrew Carr. And one, Andrew Carr. I think this was the one, he pump fakes, he gets past Malawach, Pump fakes again around the rim, gets him up in the air, which was the second time he did that to Malawach in this game, and converts the and one again, 72-70 Kentucky. And I apologize again because I didn't write down the time. I'll try to be better next time. But I don't know if you remember this, but 72-70, we get the ball. I don't remember the time here. I apologize.
141.
141, okay. Foster gets fouled. We're in the bonus. It's a 1-1. I got to tell you, I was hopeful. But based off of his track record, I was very nervous when he was going to the line.
By that time, down to 122 when Foster
122.
goes to the line.
Perfect. You had it. Nice. Good teamwork here. And so he misses it. And
So we're down 2.
Down 2. And I may have the time. How I didn't write this down. How did we tie the game?
Flagg hits a 2 to tie the game at 72-72 with 1 minute to go. Kentucky gets the ball back. I'm so confused by his
Kerr Kriisa.
Steve Kerr Kriisa.
Yes.
He gets blocked.
Malik Brown, awesome block on a 3-pointer.
Right? So he gets blocked. Duke has the ball, timeout Duke, and all of a sudden the clock is coming down to like
26 seconds.
Yep. And it's
19 on the shot
seconds.
clock.
You got it. 26 seconds left. Duke ball. K2 has to inbound it. Flagg gets the ball, and that's the first of the 2 turnovers.
He has the matchup he's liked all game.
Yep.
He gets downhill. He spins to try to create the space off of Carr, and he loses it. And Otega Owe, shout out to Owe, along with Carr, who had a number of just like key plays throughout the game. And he's in the right spot. He's in the right spot. And the ball comes loose. He takes it, dribbles it down. He gets fouled by Con Knipple, goes to the line, and Kentucky is up by 2. He hit them both, I believe.
74-72 Duke. Kentucky.
10 seconds to go. They inbound it. Duke, I want to say this. When they were inbounding the ball, they had no timeouts. They seemed a little uncertain as to who the ball was going to. I think we knew it was going to Flagg, but just when it was getting to Flagg. And it ends up going immediately to him. He tries to dribble it down the left side, lose it again. And that's the game, basically, right there. He loses it out of bounds. Kentucky ball. They get it inbounds off of a nice inbounds play. They got Lamont Butler open. They sent him long. And that's sometimes how the cookie crumbles. It's basketball.
It's basketball, and Kentucky will continue to rise in the rankings based on taking down number 7. But what I want, if there's a bright light for us Duke fans here, it is the scheduling that Coach Shire put together by putting these games in early. This is absolutely a, Final 8, Final 4 kind of matchup that you'd like to see. Great competition. It was just a great basketball game from both sides. It's like it pains me not to want to mention the 2 injuries because I would have liked to have seen the game, even if Kentucky wins this the way they did. I wouldn't like to have this asterisk that we're never going to know. What was Mal's injury? What was, Sion James's injury? It's going to be, and I was hoping we would get through this somehow with the win. At the 2 minute mark, there was a chance. At the 1 minute mark, there was a chance. We get through it with a win. Our next game isn't it's a powder puff game, and maybe we would find out what condition the Duke team was in. But that's just not the way the basketball gods had this game pegged. And what a great what a great job of melding these players who had not played together by Coach Pope. I love the fans who had the Pope hat on, as if he was in Italy. It was just great. The atmosphere was terrific from both sides. The Kentucky fans travel really well. A great atmosphere inside Atlanta. But for us Duke fans, it's a loss. It is a loss on many levels. We don't know the status of the injuries. We don't know. And K2, as opposed to Cooper Flagg, who clearly had a great game right up until the end, committing the 2 turnovers. Other than that, I really don't have too much negative to say about a 17-year-old with how many points?
He had 26 points. He had 12 rebounds. He had 2 assists. He had 2 blocks. And
Right,
up until the end of the game, he had 1 turnover, but he ends up with 3.
In the first half, they may have committed 1 turnover as a team by the end of the first half.
Yeah.
So
they had 6 in the second half.
Right. They clearly were in command. Now, give me K2's line.
I'll do that. Remind me, I have a point on Sion James, which I got from the practice I want to come back to. So I'll go through some stats. I have the box score pulled up on my phone here with some minutes. So Con Knipple, 5 of 20 from the field. He finished with 14 points. Now, that's notable because he was 4 of 12, seemed to have turned the corner towards the end of the first half with 12 points. So that means he was 1 for 8 with 2 points in the second half. I think as a Duke fan, I'm gonna be optimistic. I think Con Knipple is going to learn from this game, and he's going to be better as the year goes on. I think while it's certainly disheartening to lose this game, all the credit to Coach Pope and all the Kentucky players from Andrew Carr to Otega Ogwe, Lamont Butler, Kirk Kriisa, who am I forgetting? Amari Williams. Like, they played great, especially in the second half. I think this Duke team, though, is going to get better as the year goes on, and so will Kentucky. I think they will too. And I think it would be a lot of fun, if this ends up being, like a Elite Eight, type matchup down the road, right, where they see each other down the road. But I think more importantly, we gave a lot of credit, when we spoke at halftime to the guards, Foster and Proctor. And looking at the stats, Foster finished with 4 points, 2 of 9 shooting. He just couldn't buy a 3. He got a lot of open looks, especially in the second half. And I think he's a great shooter. I'm just kind of laughing. We got a comment that we're not going to work out. We argue too much. That's never going to end. I think it's going to continue to work out, though. But that's part of the fun. And Proctor, he had a great first half, 10 points, 2 points in the second half. They lost some of the aggressiveness. Somebody commented, Ernest, he said Shire shouldn't have ran so many ISO plays down the stretch. I don't know if it was Shire or the team, but I agree. We ended up in this ISO-heavy offense with Cooper Flagg. And at the same time, I wonder if some of that is just because we couldn't buy a 3. We were 3 for 12 in the first half. I was like, it's got to get better than this, right?
Right.
1 for 11 in the second half.
So and for combined 4 for
4 for 23. And one of the things I said in our preview was I know Kentucky's going to hit threes. We've
Yes.
got to compete with them, and we just didn't. We just didn't. So again, I don't know how many times we've said this. Shout out to Kentucky. They're a great team. I think they are going to, after this game, they're certainly going to move up to, I don't know, 12, right? But pretty
Easily.
quickly, they're going to be in the top 10. This is a very good Kentucky team.
And I think that, look, both teams, it was, my description of this was that it was like almost a pickup game in the sense that the only two guys that really had experience with the same team was the backcourt for Duke. After that, everybody comes in through the portal or recruited. There was one player who had played for Coach Pope at his previous college. He brought him with him. Other than that, I felt like I was back in Queens and it was in the schoolyard and we were going like, I got this guy, you got this guy, you got this guy. Now, look, by the end of the year or the end, as we get to March, they will obviously, both teams will gel. And this is exactly what Coach Shire, I think, needs in order. Look, I always said that as a coach, when I would coach, you could teach a team far more from a loss than from a win. And that it's always easier to, if you're winning, like everyone feels great and like, okay, you're barely listening, you got headphones on. But if it's a loss, everyone's feeling down and it's much easier for the coaching staff to go in there. And I think that that our listeners are going to give me a hard time with this. Aside from the injuries, the fact that the backcourt gives no support, there's no three-point shooting. Knipple shoots. He shit the bed. It was his first real test out there, and he couldn't contribute, leaving it all to America's All-American, who really did a fabulous job up until the 2 turnovers. But it's like everyone else was like, hey, let's just let Coop win the game for us. No, it's not going to work that way. And certainly that wasn't the way it was working in the exhibitions. It wasn't the way it was working in the 2 games they played, although his stat lines were good. I don't like that kind of sense of like, gee, we can, even though, Zion James is out of the game. All right. We've got to rely on other players, and I'm sort of disappointed in the backcourt. But if you've been listening to our show all along, talking ball, I have concerns about that backcourt. And the first half, you proved me wrong, and the second half, I may have proved you wrong.
It was a tale of 2 halves for the backcourt for certain, right?
Absolutely.
And look, if you're new to the channel right now, please hit that like button. It helps us grow. All the Kentucky fans who came on for the preview, who are here, right now, love that you guys are, listening to our perspective. I think it's really cool. And you guys have a great team, and it's going to be a long season. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And to kind of take your point one step further, in a game with all of that to happen, for it to come down to one possession, I think says that overall, as depressed as I am about the result of this game, that overall this team is going to be, this Duke team specifically, because Kentucky, they won the game. They're off to the races. They're going to be really good. But this Duke team is going to be all right. I think they're going to be really good. And as the year goes on, they'll figure out some of these issues that came up in this game. And the one thing I will say, as somebody who also, likes to cover the draft and look at prospects in that way, is the 2 concerns for Cooper Flagg that other people have had, that I had, kind of came up in this game in terms of the 3-point shooting. He struggled from behind the arc. He did hit the 1-3, which was the 1-3 that Duke hit in the second half, but he finished 1 for 5 from 3. And the other area is his dribbling, which was the issue for his 2 turnovers at the end of the game.
Absolutely.
And look, for another month or so, he's still 17. I'm sure he's going to get better at both those things. He led the way for Duke. I think this was a game where you have to also, the one thing you could say about Coach Shire in this game, and and look, we kind of saw the writing on the wall in terms of he had starting five, and then he had the three transfers off the bench that he trusted. But in this game, the one thing, if you were to be critical of Shire, in my opinion, was that it would have been good to get either Evans or Harris into the game in the first half. So when Sion goes down in the second half, you're not inserting a guy cold into this game. Because once they didn't play in the first half, I think it would have been really hard for them to join this game at this intensity once they got to the second half.
No, I think that that's a really good point, and especially Harris, who is 40% 3-point shooter. If no one else is hitting, why not have someone else who has a 40% shot from 3-point range come into the game and potentially be that other guy that takes pressure off of Coop? And
Yes.
so um, not only, one more time for all the Kentucky fans who are listening, not only was I wrong about Coach Pope, I think Coach Pope actually outcoached John Shire at the end of the game and at halftime by making the adjustments that he did. And, just too much reliance on one guy. And, I mean, even when we had Zion, who we just marveled at the things he could do in a court. When it came down to they lose to Kansas,
They lost to Michigan State.
Michigan State. I always say Kansas, but it is Michigan State. They
It,
lose to, and that's with Zion and RJ. I mean, I thought surely we're going to the Final Four, but no. And so if you're not willing to embrace the full team, especially when you have other players that can do the job, then and to do so before you get to ACC play and let them be in that moment like this. This was like absolutely. Uh, I'll show my age. You'll call it the Elite Eight. I call it the Grade Eight. That goes back a long time ago. But the Grade Eight, it was absolutely a terrific, terrific March Madness game.
yeah, 100%. And I think it was our maybe it was the Kentucky preview, or maybe it was after the Army game. The one thing I said to you was that I felt like the third and fourth most talented offensive players for this team might be Darren Harris and Isaiah Evans.
Yeah,
Um,
you did.
and with that being said, though, I think it's easy for me to sit here. I'm not gonna group you into this. For me to sit here, Monday morning quarterback Coach Shire, and say he should have uh, given some of these guys some minutes in the first half. But at the same time, we had 46 points in the first half. The offense wasn't necessarily the issue, even though we were 3 of 12 from three.
That's not where I'm thinking they should come in. I'm thinking in the second half when Mal's knee is giving him trouble, and maybe it was cramps, maybe it was the knee, maybe it was the foot, because that's actually on the replay. It shows that he landed partially on his foot. Um, so when Mal's in trouble, and when Sion, 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 Sion,
Sion.
Sion, I want to go Zion, but all right, Sion James, he's got two injuries. He knows he only has really six guys that he can go to. Why not give one of the other players a chance? I know it's a close game, but it's a close game that he scheduled in order to do exactly what happened here. Put him in a position where it's going to be a tough matchup, and that's how you're going to win a championship, how you play in the final 2 minutes of this. And yes, to his credit, you're right. I'm being a little too hard on him. To his credit, with 2 minutes to go, they could have won. With 1 minute to go, they had a chance to win. So even though he had really six bodies he could count on, there was still a chance to bring in two other guys sometime in that half.
And I think it's important because looking back to, you know, 2014 when Kentucky was unbelievable. They went 38-1. Duke does win the national championship that year. But why did they win? Because
Who won the
Grayson
national championship that year?
Duke. Duke. But listen,
Even though Kentucky had what record?
they're 38-1, but
I gotta get in something, to my
hold on.
Kentucky fans who hated my performance. I gotta get in something, so I gotta go back in history a little bit here. But one other thing about history, it was 12-11 in Duke and Kentucky matchups, with Duke having won 9 of the last 11 matchups with Kentucky. And had they won today, it would have evened it out. Hats off again. Kentucky held it, and now it's 13-11.
All right, since you interjected on my point I was going to get to here, I want to shout out Brian Poe, who asked if you were confused that Calipari wasn't on the sideline, and I spot on. I think you were just wondering, who's this Mark Pope guy? What is he doing on the sideline? Where did Cal go? But
that wasn't the issue. The issue was it was just Kentucky, and I was thinking about Kentucky being in the Champions Classic year after year, and therefore it was Coach Cal. And I just read the article about Cal coaching at Arkansas and how he broke up the team there. And then I really didn't do as much research as I should have. And the Kentucky fans were right. I should have done more on Coach Pope, which I did in the lead up to tonight's game, and understand his coaching career and how he assembled the team. And it was not like I thought Coach Cal was actually there. I'm not that.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm just reading off some of our comments from our listeners here. So I appreciate the comment from Mr. Poe. But the point I was getting to before, the reason why I brought up that year specifically was because the reason we win that championship game over Wisconsin is because of Grayson Allen, who was a guy who was out of the rotation the first chunk of the season. He starts getting some minutes in ACC play, in part because Rashid Suleiman is dismissed from the team. We'll kind of skip over that for now. But his playing time and his role grows as the year goes on. He develops some confidence, and that is why it's so important, especially as you said, in these games before conference play, to get – it doesn't have to be both Harris and Evans. I get it's hard to get to 10 guys. Even Kentucky, who had played 10 guys, shortened their rotation really to 9 guys in this matchup. And so I think it would have been good to get one of those two guys some minutes in this game.
Well, especially if you're looking at the stat line in the second half for Proctor and our other guard,
Foster.
It's 12:30 here in New York. So yes, I am up past my bedtime here. Foster, if you're looking at the stat line for the guards, someone might have said, Harris, maybe let's give him a couple of minutes. Maybe he can get a shot or two off. We've seen that time after time with Duke teams when some player who we didn't expect hits a couple of threes, and it's just enough to give a jolt to the rest of the team. And but it's to your point, razor thin margin. With 2 minutes and 1 minute to go, we still have a chance to win.
30 seconds to go. 20 seconds to go. Hey, that's basketball. That's how it goes sometimes. You have any closing comments here?
No, the last pass kind of reminded me of Grant Hill throwing it to Christian Laettner. But You know,
Almost the same, like, a little bit
it was
different.
it was pretty smart in terms of instead of just trying to inbound the ball, he took it was a really long pass, and that was by Kerr, who inbounded.
No, I think it was Kobe Brea. I think it was Kobe Brea.
At the very end there.
Yeah.
Uh, I stopped writing at that point. I was too depressed, but that was a hell of a pass to throw at the length of the court. It was very smart, and the guy caught it. And, then there was a foul there, prolonged the ending of the game. But that was a very, very smart thing to not go short and give Duke a chance to get a quick bucket. So, yes,
Yeah.
that's my point.
Just want to answer a couple of comments quickly before I sign off. And if you think of anything after I'm done here, feel free to interject. Ron Hollinsworth asked if we know when the press conference is. I don't know when it's going to be, but I know that they'll have the clips up on YouTube by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, is my assumption there. And Will Harp says, hey, I don't understand why the coach for Duke is not playing Isaiah Evans. I watched him in high school. That boy can play. He can flat out shoot the basketball. Help me understand that, somebody, please. And I think we kind of both just talked about that. We agree.
We agree.
That is
great comment.
If there is one thing, I understand, and I understand maybe it can't be both him and Harris, but one of those two should have certainly got some minutes in this game. But hey, I think at the same time, if Cooper Flagg scores, in those last 20 seconds and Duke ends up winning this game, maybe we don't even talk about it, right? We say they should get some minutes against Wofford.
And to my Kentucky haters, should that have happened, I still would have said Coach Pope had a hell of a game coaching, and the players on Kentucky are going to wind up being a good team. It was a very smartly put together, but I think it's time for you to give it a wrap.
I agree. I think we're about done here. So with that being said, thanks for all you guys, Kentucky fans, Duke fans. If you're a Duke fan, hit that subscribe button. If you're a Kentucky fan, if you wouldn't mind, like the video. We'll see you guys on the next episode here as we look ahead to the matchup with Wofford. We'll be releasing that preview at some point. I guess today. It's already Wednesday. So it will be later on today. We'll be getting to that. And we'll see you guys next time.